Today on Floyd's Mayhem Garage, we're going to get rid of these old factory wheel tubs, and we're going to install a set of Slosh Tubz on the square body C10. So, in order to install these Slosh Tubz, your tool selection actually ends up being pretty small. We needed a 1/2 inch and 9/16 socket and ratchet. We used a 1/4 inch impact as well, but the ratchet will suffice if that's all you have. Otherwise, we needed a drill with an 1/8 inch drill bit and a 1/2 inch drill bit. You will need some way to cut the inner fender, whether that's a cutoff wheel, which is what we ended up using, or Sawzall or other means. But you will need something to cut out the inner fender. And then we did find that a pick tool was useful. After having the holes drilled, you could help locate the bolt holes. And other than that, that's pretty much all we needed for this job. Alright, Floyd's Mayhem Garage today. We're actually in Taylor's garage. So we're here working on his GMC C15, C10, Chevy GMC, whatever this says. It's GMC, which is I think is C15. But either way, I'm calling it a C10. We got some Slosh Tubz to install on this thing because Taylor, as any good hot rodder wants to do, lowered it, made it, dropped it, got a good stance on it, got a big set of wheels. Now it's undrivable because the wheels rub so bad. So he got a set of Slosh Tubz ordered up. Those came in the other day, so we're here today to put those in. We did end up removing the hood on this. Don't think that's entirely necessary. But for what we're doing, filming wise, it's going to make it easier. And then we do have the filler plates, which actually go where the hood hinges are. So if those aren't necessary on the wheel tubs, but we did opt, or I guess Taylor opted to go with these on his truck. So you'll actually cut out part of the inner fender here and replace them with those. So in that case, we did have to remove the hood hinges. So that's already done. Past that, next steps are just going to be unbolting stuff, getting things out of the way, get the washer fluid out of the way, get the battery tray. Just unbolt pretty much everything that's attached to the fenders and then get those out. We'll probably get the truck jacked up, get the wheels, just get those out of the way because that'll give us a lot more room to work and we'll go from there. So at this point, we've taken some stuff out from underneath the hood, but we got the truck jacked up, we've got the wheels taken off, so now we've got access to the inside of the inner fender here. Looks like we're mostly going to be 1/2 inch bolts and 9/16 bolts. So it looks like we got just a handful of those along the edge here, we got a couple on the inside, and then double check, make sure we got everything unhooked from up top, and this should drop down and out of here. Pretty basic on this inner fender. There's not really hidden bolts or anything like that. There's mostly just along the edge of the wheel opening here, and then you have a couple on the inside and one here against the cab. You have some across the bottom of the radiator support, and nothing tricky or nothing hard to get to. This one being metal, it looks like we're going to have to tweak it just a little bit to try to get it out of here. So I believe that, get it through. Okay, so now that we have both the inner fenders out, we have them sitting side by side, and kind of cool because you can see the comparison on them. They're both going to sit flat where they go to the radiator support, and then where they mount to the back of the cab. And then basically this is where they mount across the fender. And this one comes just basically straight out. And so where this one's going to mount across the fender, you actually have this raised portion, and then it comes out. So this is pretty much where all your height difference is in this fender. So they're almost identical, except this basically just has a bigger bulge for it for your wheels. So one of the big reasons for changing the inner fender wells here, you can see this is actually the inside where the wheel is. Having lowered the truck the way it is, the wheels were rubbing really bad on these inner fenders, and you can see they've actually begun to left rubber on here, and I've worn these down to metal. And this is rubbing, the driver's side wasn't as bad, the passenger side was rubbing quite a bit worse here. Doing some test fitting on this filler panel. What this is it's just a panel to clean up the inside of the fender well here. So the template that we have for the piece of paper pretty much follows this exact edge and is where you need to cut to line up with the inner fender or the slosh tub. So just getting this in here, you got to kind of bend it to get in here. It is a tight fit, but now that it's in here, it actually fits really well. Bolt holes line up for the hood hinge. I think what we're going to do is we're probably going to add another bolt or two or a few just to hold it tight to the inner fender, or to the actual fender itself. And we had to tweak it a little bit to get around some of the bolt holes, one of the adjuster screws for the headlight. But other than that, it'll get cleaned up and it'll look nice in here. And then on this as well, there's a difference with or without the filler panel. So you can run the Slosh Tubz with the filler panel like we have, or if you choose not to, you get this filler panel, which basically you cut out the inner fender on this to mate up with the Slosh Tub itself. And so that's what the template's for. You'll follow along this line, and so when you cut that out and trim it out, the Slosh Tub will more or less line right up with this. But since we're running the filler panels, we can end up cutting actually a little bit more out of this, clean it up, and kind of follow some of the factory lines. It'll end up being a little bit easier to cut out as well, because that filler panel is coming back in. It'll cover up anything that we cut out. So once we got the template on there, we marked the line off with a sharpie. And once you had the kind of rough line here, it was pretty easy to come back here and kind of finalize it with a piece of tape. And the tape will be nice because it'll give you something visually bright to follow when cutting out, as in our case we're going to be using a cutoff wheel. So any air sparks and stuff, it'll just be nice and bright to follow. It'll cut basically a small little section out here, and this is basically just the new area for the new tub to sit up against, where it's raised up. And so we ended up going a little bit further than what the template said, just to kind of clean up the end here. Just made it in with this existing hole down here, and then we just tapered it off to a point back there. So hopefully it's relatively clean when we're done cutting it up. So it looks like the filler panel for the passenger side, we're going to have to modify a little bit. Where it comes off the hinge mounts here, it comes straight off, which is going to put us right into the blower motor area. So I'm guessing these were designed for a non-AC truck, where the heater box is actually pushed over and not in the way. But this one being a factory AC box, all this is pushed over in here. So it looks like we're going to have to modify it, I think. It's got this folded edge, we can just cut that off. And then should be able to make a bend line and another bend line. And basically it bends around this to still give it that kind of filler panel look. Cool. So made a couple bends in here. First attempt was actually pretty close. So that's probably good enough. I think we can just leave it. Bolts line up perfect here. Front fits pretty good. Got to get it kind of held up into place. Got mounting hole cut out for battery tray. So I think this one's ready to pull back out and paint along with the other one. So it's looking good. So we got the wheel tub in. Now it's time to kind of get it lined up where it needs to be. Directions, we got to drill pilot holes at the front off of the radiator support. So once we get everything where it's sitting, up and down, front to back, side to side, we can drill 1/8" pilot holes through the front, pull those out, actually drill bigger holes, bolt it back up, and then we can mark the rest of the holes with tape so we know where we need to drill those and go from there. So now that we got the pilot holes drilled for the front, those are bolted into the radiator support. That tells us where the tub needs to be. So we marked them with tape, and then just with the tape, marked it with even a Sharpie. That way we know where it needs to be on the line. And then we'll pull this out, and looking at the old tubs, looks like they were about 1/2" from the edge. So we'll drill the holes similar to that on this one. Same thing, pilot holes, double check that everything actually lines up. We'll then go with the 1/2" holes and should be able to bolt everything up. Got all the pilot holes drilled, and then actually got them drilled out to the 1/2" as well. It was a lot of in and out. Got them all marked with tape, figure out where they were. Came to find that the old inner fender was really helpful, especially on these two, because these ones are pretty much blind where they are up against the firewall. So found referencing the old one got us really in the area where we needed to be, and then we were able to zone in and actually find where the hole needed to be. So I got those drilled out, got all these, so we should be ready for final assembly on this. Part of the hardware kit for this is the longer bolts, and it looks like these are going to make this a lot easier, because what you can end up doing is threading this in, and just getting it started gives you a whole bunch of room. So you get one started, move on to the next one, get them all in before you tighten any of them, and that will give us room to push this thing around and pull it. So if any of the holes aren't drilled exactly perfect, or you need to pull it in a different way, it'll give you some room to play with it before you do a final tighten down of all the bolts. Now that we've had these in and out, we've got the holes drilled. These are ready to go in for, I believe, the final time. We've also come to find as well, having them in and out so many times, there's a little bit of a trick getting them in and out. It turns out it's a little easier to get the front side in, and then you kind of roll the whole back side in. Because you gotta kind of get these tucked up over the suspension and spindle. You gotta make sure the front side's tucked under the radiator support. And then you can roll the back side off of the steering box. Yeah, that ended up working pretty good. It took a while. We messed with these quite a while, several times trying to get them in and out. That seems to be the best method. Get the front end first, and the back kind of rolls in. Truck finished up, wheels bolted on, sitting on the ground. Got it moved, got it sitting where it should. Before with the old wheel tubs, we only had about an inch, maybe a hair more of travel before the wheel rubbed the inner wheel well. So now with the new Slosh Tubz, there's a good 4 inches of room in there, so a lot more travel and clearance through the whole thing. So, and with this now being finished up, we have these pieces that we cut out on the inner fenders. This was a good kind of visual reference to give you an idea of how much you needed to cut out. There's really not a ton that you end up taking out of the fenders to make clearance for these Slosh Tubz.